Does anybody want more air through? I don't mind.
I mean, that sounds
Happy
good.
enough.
Yeah. It's quite warm in here, even without that many people.
Yes, to have a safe space, it's important to have a good breeze blowing through. Not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah, the first safe space is here.
Right, so this panel is called Sustaining Safe Spaces. So I have some people to talk about that. You have to forgive me, my computer went kaput like 3 days ago with all my notes on it. So to my left is Emily Brady, one of my colleagues on the Caption committee, Caption secretary. Emily is the founding member of one of the founding members of the Comics Artists Talking Secretly Cats Facebook page, and it's sort of sibling the CVA, which is more of a public group. So Cats excludes event organisers and fans. I think CVA is probably more down to sharing resources.
Yeah.
Emily's a member of Spide Forest webcomics collective, curated community thing with a high standard of behaviour and inclusivity for members. To my right is Steve Tanner. And how I came to choose Steve for this was through the AOCC, which is Association of Comics Creators, right? Yeah. Is an offshoot of the Society of Authors, sort of organically. And its mission statement is to increase transparency, create a nurturing space, to promote health and well-being using education, and to act as a contact point for creators because strength in numbers, desire to affect change. So there's a channel on there called Behaviour, where people share reports on various individuals and institutions, and as well as those specific examples. I found it very useful in sort of keeping an eye to trends. So I found Steve, who also is behind Time Bomb Comics and Quantum. I found his name associated with the Behaviour channel on there. Dominic Duong. Oh no, sorry, I butchered that surname. Ignored Wong completely. Dominic Wong?
Young.
Too much Northern Irish in my pronunciation. Young. So Dominic came up on that channel from a bit of reporting and representation on behalf of other creators at an incident at an event which shall not be named. Suffice it to say, she has her head screwed on and took an awful lot of the lead in that. I don't want to mention a specific incident or any others really, unless you just want to talk about it, because I'm more interested in sort of looking forward and what we can be doing as a society of creatives. Dominique has tells tales of queer fantasy, horror, romance and autobiography in a clean and extravagant style, exemplified in The Dog and the Cat, nominated for an Ignatz and contributors Self-Made Hero, Discord and Quindry. Oh, well, your debut graphic novel out from Jonathan Cape next year. Patchwork.
Well, probably more like 2027 now.
2027,
it's taking a while to finish it, but hopefully by then.
Grand. I thought I'm going to come in with a hard question, and if nobody has answers, we can come back around it. I want to cut in some audience time for later because I want you not just to ask questions but bring up points for discussion, insights of your own. So, hard question. Reading lists. What are the resources you would go to or stick in your memory around inclusivity practice? Broadly speaking, you sent over a few for Caption for us to bear in mind. risk assessment stuff.
Oh, I see. Yeah. No. I mean, when we talk about running events, we talk about how to kind of make people feel safe in the space. So, thinking about from the start, we thought about what etiquette we wanted to have. I know there was times when you brought up how important you thought it was for people to be careful in how they speak to each other. I think, we talked about using our risk assessments to make sure that our event created a space which anyone could get to and that anyone could feel like they could take part in, even if they didn't know people or if they were new to the area, or making it feel like everybody could show up here and enjoy themselves for the day. So I think but also making our staff feel like we wouldn't be put on the spot either, I guess.
Yeah, that's sort of watching each other's backs kind of thing, and making sure nobody's taking on too much of the workload. Steve, is there anything comes to mind with reading lists for you?
I mean, not so much reading lists, but certainly for anyone that's planning an event like this, whether it's something like this, a bit more intimate, or it's one of the the larger, wider things, is just taking some time, the event organisers, as part of their planning, to account for the safe space element. I think a lot of the time you see kind of events, and you can see they've thought a lot about, like, it's all about the guests, and it's all about maybe the venue, and it's all about maybe the table cost, all that kind of stuff. But the safe space element, that's almost like an afterthought, if it's a thought at all. And I think it's really trying to encourage that kind of behaviour and awareness right from the start. So as part of all the planning, it becomes an essential part of what they're doing. And I think it's almost then taking a leaf out of other venues who aren't necessarily Comic Cons. I think one of the things that I always think is really useful is the Ask Angela initiative that they have in pubs, clubs, that kind of thing. And as far as I'm aware, there's nothing like that exists on the convention circuit.
There needs to be, doesn't there?
Yeah.
Just when we were chatting there, I got thinking about Ellen Murray, trans disabled person in Belfast, who has written a access guide for event organisers and how they should look after making venues disabled access. And I'm a bit far outside the sort of convention circuit with my own experience, so I don't know if anything like that exists.
We used Zara Slattery's guide to making venues accessible when we were looking at this place, when we were testing out kind of like whether, for example, someone who would struggle to walk or wheelchair, was using a wheelchair, would have easy car access, be nearby, that sort of thing, whether the doors were wide enough, whether there was a lack of steps around. So she'd written quite a good guide that I think, not to name someone not on the panel, but I think Barry, you put that on in front of us, didn't you? The guide to accessibility from Zara.
It's part of the CISA kind of overview in the past couple of years of things that need to be improved. Which Zara's a part of. And when Zara got in touch, mentioned about it as well, so to put on board, and kind of the key thing we were looking for. So somewhere that was modern, which this building clearly is, accessible or one level, and things like that as well. But also, not just in terms of the physical aspect of the building, but how we laid the chairs out, there's a through running into fire exits, and just basic stuff like that, which in a corporate environment, that's kind of taken for granted because you have people in place just for that particular job. When it comes to conventions, because sometimes it's done by fans or by people who just want to make as much money as possible, it's not always necessarily the first thing that's on the mind. Well, in a corporate environment, So it's nice to bring that into a convention environment.
Dominique, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I think I would say that when I've done like events before and they were like not good, it's very like, I think at the core of it a lot of the time it's the organisers' first priority and maybe only priority is really making money, and it ends up really showing in the event itself and like how it's run, how like, you know, people like, you know, guests are treated, or like exhibitors, artists, traders, etc. are treated as well. And like again, like I think because you brought up accessibility as well, like a lot of like most events I have to like rent out and like find a venue, rent it out like for the duration of the event, and so sometimes stuff like disabled toilets or something, or how it's set up is due to the venue, but at the same time you've chosen to be in this venue. Like one con I did, the venue it was at had, I think, not that I saw it, apparently there was one disabled toilet, but then all the other toilets had like literal steps inside the toilets, which, I mean, it doesn't really make sense. It's like, why would you have stairs inside the bathroom space, and like maybe like one disabled toilet for the entire, and then it's like a big con as well, it's a big venue, it's like one disabled toilet for like all the disabled guests or people coming here. It's like, it doesn't make sense, and that's down to the venue, but at the same time you chose to be in this venue probably to cut costs or something, but it's like, you know, it just really shows when the organisers don't care, not just in it for the money.
Yeah. So following that thread through of convention behaviour, I wanted to sort of see if we could talk a bit about good practice. So as a bit of a general question, like there's an incident at a convention, like what should we be handling it, how sort of on the ground, you know, maybe got a sales table, something's happening next to us. I mean, I think I've already said, Dominic, I invited you along because I really in high respect of your reporting on that particular incident, and that's sort of, I suppose that's, I felt that was essential afterwards, but like on the ground in the moment, do you want to start us off on like good practices?
I think like good practices, if I'm talking about from like the artist's perspective, like being there and everything, it's just like, you know, like looking out for your fellow exhibitors or guests as well. If you see like, you know, unsavory behaviour, shall we say, happening, or like bad things happening, or someone's like, you know, someone's treating someone in a way that they shouldn't, it's like, you know, being aware of that, like looking out for your fellow people basically. And like not even just like unsavory behaviour, just like, you know, if the organisers themselves are being like terrible, then, you know, supporting your fellow artists and like, if you can, like banding together and, you know, speaking up about it as well, because if you don't say anything, no one else is gonna know about what's happening either. And like for context, because we're referring a lot to the incident, basically a few years ago I did a weekend convention, and it was just very poorly organized. There was like the volunteers didn't know anything, and I don't know, basically some people had paid for guest extra passes to, you know, have people helping them at their table, but then because of a misunderstanding with wording in the email, some people thought that, you know, we just got an extra free pass, and when you go to volunteers to get it, they would just give it to you. And so there was a lot of like tension about that, because some people had paid and some had not. And then no signage for where we were, and then also there were some other like, you know, unsavory incidences happening as well, with some of the, you know, to some female artists happening there, and the management was just like,
some more sort of like not accents of communication, but purposely not on behaviour.
Yeah, and the management just like, the organisers like didn't care and wouldn't do anything, even though they have like, you know, security at the event, obviously, that it's like, it's your problem basically.
Photographs help. Like if you see an incident occur, and shoot up the camera, because people that do bad shit don't like being filmed while they're doing bad shit.
I know that as when exhibiting at Comic Cons, especially the female guests at Comic Cons, we would often have little codes that we would give to our neighbours that were like, if I say this, it means that the person at my stall is bothering me and I need you to maybe dive in and cause a distraction or something like that. Or you might have like a little thing under your table that you might turn, like almost like a card you might turn if you needed a bit of help from someone nearby. And that's the kind of thing that like comic exhibitors, you end up having all these little extra rules that you put on yourself, especially female comic exhibitors, that you shouldn't really even have to do. But all these little unspoken rules that we end up communicating to each other in case there's something that makes us feel less safe at the event.
But do you think that's a lot of it seems to be down to, and I'll talk about the bigger shows where there's not enough of the event staff, because these things invariably seem to happen when there's no one who's part one of the show organising team around. Is part of that because these big shows do insist on having volunteers, so volunteer is unpaid, so therefore they're not obliged to turn up, so therefore on the day they have so many no-shows, so there is literally just not enough people to kind of cover these areas. So it seems to be part of that. It's frustrating that it comes down to the creators themselves having to kind of deal with it.
Yeah, because at the end, I mean, the creators are customers. They are paying for a service, and it should be treated as a contract. Now, speaking of myself and Emily volunteering as Caption, on the other side of that, we've gone in with the sort of left-leaning, entrepreneurial, progressive approach, and already we've had, like today, a few sort of just miscommunications because we're doing it for the first time, right? And so we're straightening things out, and nothing's ever like perfect. But we haven't had anything happen that has been harassment or abuse, and we would stamp that out like the moment we saw it.
I would like to think that someone who was like that here would be told to kind of see themselves out, but I do feel like you're right in that sometimes it's because of a lack of staff, but I often feel that there can be people at Comic Cons who will almost kind of try to capitalise on the fact that you are in kind of like your salesperson mode, so you're being friendly, you're being talkative, you're being outgoing, and they will try and kind of capitalise on that niceness to take advantage. I think I've had examples in the past of someone who kind of whether it was intentional on their part or like malicious, they had spent a lot of the afternoon walking around the Comic-Con kind of talking to a lot of the creators there, but in a way that had made several people uncomfortable, and then followed several of us from the Comic-Con to a pub, and then when we decided to leave the pub because we weren't comfortable with the fact he was there, he was almost trying to kind of follow us home, and that made some of us feel really, really uncomfortable, and we ended up kind of trying to take a sneaky picture and then being like, in this secret group that we had, in the Comic Guys Talking Secretly group, being like, this guy was giving us really bad vibes, he was not taking a hint about, it was time to go home, he was following us around, and sharing that information and kind of saying, don't let it happen to you. But at the same time, you're right, that should be the comic convention staff's first port of call should be that you should be able to talk to them and go, this guy's giving me the creeps.
and out of interest, did you share that information in that picture with the actual show organisers?
No, I don't think we did, because I think probably we didn't think anybody would do anything about it. They'd go, oh well, he's just a paying customer, he's just being nice, it's up to you to tell him to leave you alone if you want him to leave you alone. And again, it's that kind of you're in your your
Yeah.
most outgoing, trying to be nice to everybody mode, you can't always be like, please leave me alone.
This is something Emily and I had a chat about, is the private public sphere, and I mean one of the things is like, how do we deal with problem individuals? Is whistleblowing just at each person's discretion, or is it something that comes out of that union or community conversation? And yeah, I mean, this comes into sort of general questions about how can we be responding and follow up after the event. Useful strategies. That's probably about 3 questions I won. Sorry about that.
I think the difficulty is that if someone is made to feel uncomfortable at an event, they should feel empowered enough to kind of stand up and speak about it.
Absolutely.
At the same time, if they make clear that they don't want that to be kind of made, shared, then I think that becomes, that in itself adds to the problem. So you want to respect that an individual, like a creator at a show, doesn't want it to be known that a particular person made them uncomfortable or harassed them. But at the same time, there's a frustration that because they don't want to kind of speak up about it, then that person it effectively continues. And more importantly, the kind of information about that person you can't then share it.
Yeah.
So it's almost a bit of a really frustrating catch-22 situation. And I think that's the difficult thing where you want to know where you're not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Because I think personally, if anyone I know of is making anyone feel uncomfortable at a show, I wouldn't be able to tell everyone I know about that person.
I feel the same. Yeah.
I think I should, that it should be shared far and wide. Not something which then actually I can't share now, because if I share it,
But
then
there's
this
that-
other person will be uncomfortable.
There's a little bit of
Yeah.
hesitation, isn't there,
Yeah.
for somebody who has suffered and gone through that, genuinely has thought about it at their own pace and said, I'd prefer you didn't name this person. And you're kind of torn because you have to respect their wishes. But, knowledge is power. So, it helps to, you at least have that information you can carry around with you.
Yeah, I can understand why some people might not want to name and shame, depending on the people involved. Because if it's someone who has already has a reputation in the sense, a good reputation, and potentially a following or anything, then it's there's the fear, because it happens all the time, that you won't be believed, and not just you not believed, but that you yourself will get backlash for it. So I can understand why some people would not necessarily want to put themselves in that, potentially risk putting themselves in that position. But then I also do understand as well wanting to name and shame potential the potential person involved as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Irish, Northern Irish. I'm always out for blood. I thought just sort of make sure I'm bringing in sort of online safeguarding. So nobody wants to police, but sometimes a moderator is just needed. Do you want to start to speak to that? Start that.
Yeah.
I like your eyes over the way.
Oh, thank you. So I'm part of Spider Forest Webcomic Collective, and we are a fairly mid to large group of webcomic creators. It's a curated group, so every year they have an application season. People can apply to be part of the group, and then if they are selected, they are then invited into a kind of a sealed off kind of Discord that they can be part of, so they can have an online channel to talk to each other. You are in a you can either have your own hosting for your webcomics, or you can have shared hosting with the group. So there's a lot of support for each other. But there, you know, over the years, there have also been times when someone either within the community or in the fan part of the community has kind of taken a step over the line in what we would consider, you know, polite behaviour. Like, and I know we've got another member in the audience, but so we have quite high standards that we set for ourselves of like appropriate behaviour in how we talk to each other, appropriate behaviour in like almost the content of the comics, and you know, like you want to have other comics around you that you are proud to show off and say, this is my friend's comic, this is my friend's comic, you know. So we hold both our own behaviour and the content of our work to a high standard. But we have had times over the years when we've had to eject someone from the community or eject someone from the fan areas of our community. Like, for example, one recent one was someone who was under 18 and who they hadn't been accepted during the yearly acceptance drive, and they were upset about it, and like they said some rather unkind things about people and so on, and this led to a conversation between some of the organisers saying, well, you know, we have an over 18s policy for our members because we want to make sure that this is a safe space for adults to be talking in an adult way to other adults, but also do we need to have a similar rule for our public areas? And I don't actually know whether whether that's moved ahead or not, because it was just something they were talking about. But it's you know, it's another area where you're thinking about kind of what is the space that we're going to try and curate. What does it mean to be safe in that space? Like if you're over 18 and you're in an over 18 space, you know, what does that mean? Like, do you want to be able to swear without feeling like you're insulting anyone? You know, do you want to be able to talk about adult topics without someone going, I'm a minor and I don't want you to talk around that around me, and you're going, whoops, I didn't know you were here, that kind of thing. So it is important to think about a safe space, not just in terms of safety for everyone, but what needs to be the safety for a particular group. Sorry, that was a really long-winded way of saying it. I'm really sorry.
Dominic, do you mind if I ask you about the reporting of that incident? So you took to Twitter, and were really like full, proper. You know, if you have the police around, you have to give a witness statement, or problem neighbours, and you write a log out, and so you were proper sort of gathering everything together, and I think it was probably really useful for yourself and for the others involved. Sorry, I thought I had a question at the end of that. Could just say a thing.
Yeah, well, when me and the other artists for Artist Alley were doing the con together, and like, you know, it was not going very well, we weren't happy about the way we were being treated or how Artist Alley was being treated as well. Like, we all, like, you know, exchanged information. We had a group chat set up, and of course we were talking in person as well when we were doing the event too. And because like people were like really unhappy, I thought, like, you know, I have the skills, like I'm quite good at like organising things, like putting stuff together. So it's like, well, one, like I want to use my skills for good, and to help like basically compile all the evidence, all the complaints and stuff. And like we contacted the organisers privately first to see what their response would be, and then I would share it with the others. I basically acted as like, you know, the middleman contact for everyone. And when their response was like very unsatisfactory, then that's when I started like probably compiling like everything into like basically a Twitter thread of information and evidence and like complaints and such to publicly post online, because privately they weren't, like, the organisers were not like, you know, sorry or like willing to offer like anything to us or anything like that. So that's when like I went public with it, and then obviously a lot of people were sharing it and they're sharing it as well, and that got the attention of the organisers as well. And then we were continuing to communicate privately as well, and like
so you'd given them a chance to respond and within a safe space of their own.
Yeah, because I think like if you can, like I think it's always good to try and resolve it privately before going public, like both like to give the organisers a chance if they will potentially like make up for it and like apologise, whatever, and also for yourself as well, because like like if you can avoid making this a big public like fallout, then I think that probably for yourself that's also better as well. But yeah, like going privately didn't work, so we went public with it, and then the organisers were contacting me again, like email, because they saw it all like blowing up online as well, and like they were still not apologetic, and they were actually threatening to blackball me, and like we're gonna tell like you're banned from like any event that we do ever again. Like we'll tell other like cons as well about what you're doing if you keep doing this, so you can't like exhibit at their events either. It's like they really like doubled down on being like terrible.
Are you actually blacklisted by them still, or today?
I mean, I've never I don't like the event wasn't very good, so I've never bothered. And then all that stuff happened, so it's not like I ever tried to like book a table at one of their events ever again. So I don't know if like they actually still remember all of this or not. They would recognize my name. It's like no, she should not.
I don't know if these big conventions are like operating on a sort of franchisee basis, but that was one of the bigger ones, and there's another of the bigger ones who is run or owned by somebody with connections with the Tommy Robinson far right brigade. So yeah, you want to do sort of a bit of a background sort of dig into see who's doing what. Is there anything you want to add, Steve, in regards like the Discord with the Association of Comics Creators or any other areas?
I think really what would be kind of useful is that for when there are these kind of larger events, there is some kind of maybe something that's put out through your channels where there are people can be aware that there's certain kind of tables within that setup that can be almost like refuge places. I think that would be useful so people know there is somewhere where they can actually go, rather than feel that they're isolated. Especially if they're looking around and there is no volunteer or member of staff. So there is a place where people can actually head to. So that is that kind of safe space refuge. Because we don't have that. And I think for the bigger cons, it's really important because I think 9 times out of 10, these things seem to happen at the larger events where there's so many people. And some of the behaviour is driven by just the way that things are at the conventions. I regularly do some of the bigger ones. And what I tend to notice is that, I mean, you have lots of cosplayers. Some of them are quite young. But the amount of kind of photographers, and you can see they're trying to get the cosplayers to stand in a certain way or pose in a certain way so they can get pictures of their backsides or that kind of stuff. And that seems to be, you can see that seems to be an accepted thing.
With that specifically, it's got to be about consent. Like, if you've got a cosplayer who absolutely wants photos of their backside taken, go for it. But like it should never be surreptitious or non-consensual.
But I think the problem is that there are people that say that's fine, but then the person that that's taken them then kind of assumes that that's applies to everybody.
Applies to be assumed,
and it doesn't. It doesn't, and that's the difference.
I mean, singing Caption's praises, we've got Vicky Bernard as one of the committee who pioneered the quiet space this year, and like it's a perfectly sort of when Vicky came to us with the suggestion, it was very much in keeping with Caption's ethos. We all unanimously were right in there. Actually, is there anything you want to say about that now?
I guess just if anyone has any feedback to give about the quiet space, I would love to hear it. This is the first time being a part of a committee to any sort of festival like this, and I'm still very much learning on the job. If anyone has any feedback, I'd love to hear it.
It's a very cosy little space, like a couple of doors down. I don't know how late we're open tonight for that. How late it's open tonight?
I think until the event closes. I've not been told it closes any earlier.
Tomorrow it's kind of in the kitchen, which isn't ideal, but we don't really have anywhere else. So, but I mean, Caption has always prided itself on being a convention that won't be sort of neurologically overpowering, and also, you know, if you see somebody sitting alone, you know, sort of approach them and sound out if they want a conversation or not, and if they do, you know, plug right in and try and figure out the best you can. If they don't, and don't. There's another question I really want to ask. I'm just going to sort of read into the book. Some abuse is financial and institutional. I've got some thoughts about that too. Would something like a collective approach help? And we've already heard about a bit of that. I'm thinking a declaration, a code of conduct for organisers that they're expected to adhere to at point of sale. So nothing that deviates from their own contract with you as like renting a table from them or whatever, but lays down a reminder of the strength in numbers thing.
I think Dominique found herself like overtly blocked from this con because of, you know, raising your head above the parapet, as it were. I think I have also found myself, I'm not officially banned from a particular Comic-Con, but I used to gather feedback from creators at the con and then anonymously pass it on to the con, and now I don't get invited there anymore. So I think sometimes there can be this kind of this this financial payback, as it were, like you've made your voice too loud too many times, so you're not coming to our show. And I think that it is always about safety in numbers with comic collectives. I think we've done in the UK some really good work with creating groups of creatives who work together and, you know, do try and at least privately give each other a heads up when we think that a Comic-Con isn't doing the best by people. I was
bragging in the pub last night about how a certain comics convention that was very well thought of even amongst the independent alt crowd had raised their table fees to a ridiculous amount, and we decided to boycott it with a Camden Market table share. So this was like way back in 2008, so they were asking us £10 in the door for people and £90 for a table. We had creators on a £5 table share. There's quite a bit of difference, and that really came about from creators talking to each other, figuring routes around the problem, and just sort of getting proactive with it. And I don't know much about comics cons nowadays, but I realise that is a problem with one of the bigger indie alt ones, is that table prices thing. So I think collectivisation, unionisation, even informal unionisation is a good thing.
Yeah, I do find like the best events I've done are usually this like the smaller like indie like comic and zine fairs that are run by actual like either like artists themselves or people who like who are passionate about comics, zines, the independent like small press scene as well, because like obviously they really care about this, like the art of it and the community as well, and so they're doing the best they can to make the event the best they can and to look after generally like the artists and the visitors who come as well. And I mean, not to say that every event is perfect, but you know, like we're all human and everything, and if people are are receptive to like constructive feedback, then that's still good because like you're showing you're willing to learn. Whereas like a lot of the worst events I've done, it's like, you know, the people running it are not actually in the scene, like the art scene, comic scene, the whatever. And again, it's like, you know, the whole thing about only care about money, but then also because they're not invested in the, like, having any passion with the actual art, it's like, that's also part of why they don't care as well, like, if things...
Yeah, because there's this gap between one side of even the comic stuff that's like Star Wars or franchises, and the other that's like comics about vegan cooking. There's quite a broad... within our form and the marketing of our form, it's quite a broad and often compartmentalised thing, and I don't think it needs to be, but that's the truth of it. Steve, unionisation, collectivisation, code of conduct.
I mean, they're all great things to do, but the thing is, all these things, for them to work, you need the buy-in from the event organisers. That's what it comes down to.
Sorry, second,
you need the buy-in from the event organisers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's you know, you're just making noise, but it's not really making any change. Change has to come from the event organisation side. And if you have kind of reactions like you've experienced from event organisers, well, they're not going to be interested in that kind of approach. So I think that's the challenge, you know. And I guess as comic creators, it's making sure that we actively support those conventions that actually do respond, and you know, and the best way we do that is by being at their shows and making a noise about their shows, and then not being a part of the shows and the events that don't do that. I think where it then becomes difficult from a creative side is that sometimes creators, I was speaking to a creator recently who he was between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand he didn't want to do the show because he was aware of the background of the show. On the other hand, he knew if he did the show it would be very, very successful for him professionally. So where do you go? So it's those kind of things, I think, that creators kind of face sometimes, which is difficult choices. But ultimately, it has to come from the event side. I think anything we do as creators to unify together is going to be great, because it's always strength in numbers. But it's a 360 approach that's needed. It's pointless doing it from just one side, and there's no reciprocation from the other.
Yeah. I've got a few thoughts on that, but I want to hear if anybody in the audience who's just things they want to say, or experiences or insights to share, or questions.
Well, there's a couple of things. One was more just to get an answer, because it's a kind of real world situation, because I'm involved in quite a big volunteer run organisation that doesn't matter how well-meaning, when everybody comes together to do things, problems do occur, and it's more kind of, from my perspective, would be sort of between volunteers there can be issues, and you need a code of conduct or some kind of thing that people adhere to, like a behaviour policy. But actually this is a different question, which is going back to the accessibility one, because I work at a venue which could be a really good venue, but it's got no accessibility by the very nature of the building, because it's old and it's on about 10 different levels. It's all on one floor, but it's on 10 different levels because it was made from various different Victorian buildings. And you know, we can't afford to make it accessible. So I was just interested what your thoughts were. Not worth running events there, we do run events there, but without spending a lot of money, we can't make it accessible. So we don't have to by law, but obviously there's an issue there. We did spend a lot of money on rebuilding the toilets, and we did a lot of work about how we were going to make the toilets accessible, and then the end result was that there's no point making the toilets accessible because the rest of the building is not accessible.
part of the building is though.
Well, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's cool.
I mean, yeah, we can get into it, but I mean, if you've got somebody that has wheelchair access, we can do wheelchair access, but it means lots of lifting and carrying, and it's not an ideal situation. Because the auditorium's up 5 flights of stairs, 5 stairs, the bar's 4 stairs down, there's a lounge that's like a few stairs there, the toilet's got steps in it, because that's just how the building has come together. And we did a lot of work to try and make it that way, and we were going to change where the doors were and do a lot of work, but then we didn't have the money extra to put a lift in or put in various, because we'd need like 4 lifts to get to the different spaces, or we'd have to literally demolish half the building to put a floor in. I'm just wondering, I don't know what the question was, but just your thoughts around it.
It feels like that you're interested in getting there eventually, and that is important.
Yeah.
I think quite often making something a really accessible space can be a work in progress to some extent. You can say, right, we've made this bit accessible, our plan is to next make that bit accessible. What can you, and not just, accessible doesn't always just mean wheelchair accessible.
No,
It can mean, making sure, you can say, right, well, we're going to make sure that this is a better space for people who are deaf or blind, working, and it could be, you can say we are working on making this space more accessible, and we know it's not there yet, and sometimes, the acknowledgement is an important step, and the willingness to get there eventually is an important step too.
I've got a lot of thoughts I want to make, but on that particular point of view, I have some specialist knowledge, because for a while I was editor of a magazine for a disability charity, so I know quite a lot about accessibility issues, but I really don't want to be here in that capacity. I think the answer to what you're saying is it's got to be, you've got to include the people that, it's all very well saying, well, we're going to do this in the future and we'd like to try, but for right now, you may have 10, 20 people or so that would be with a disability or accessibility needs of different types in your audience anyway, and just talk to them and just say, this is what we have right now, this is exactly what we have right now. You may well have your own solutions to this, you may well have your own preferences. You've got, if you've got a toilet with, if you've got a toilet and you can get in the door, you're not perfect, but once you've told people about that, you say, okay, the bar isn't accessible, but we don't mind you bringing drinks or food elsewhere, and then just say to them, this is what we've got, if you were to attend, what are the obstacles, and do you already have ways to overcome them? We don't want to exclude you, but you're talking about including people a bit, or excluding them completely, or just letting them make their own decisions.
But it's also the point of making it kind of really
Yeah, but the thing is, disability is such a spectrum. I mean, it's a person that has it that knows better than any doctor, what sort of environment did they
It's like, okay, neon lights in a room may be as much a barrier as steps to certain people. It's, you're absolutely right.
True.
Just, a couple of, about 3 minutes left.
Here, and there was Emily at the back.
This lady with the bottom. Hi. I came in when you said, can you go back in your notes where you mentioned about Tommy Robinson and things like that?
All it said about that, there was, I think the 2 biggest sort of Comic-Con organisers in the UK, and that doesn't necessarily mean they have comics at their Comic-Cons, but one was involved in this sort of bullying behaviour that Dominique had been talking about, with comics dealers isolated and harassment, and the other had Tommy Robinson links.
It's one of the event organisers in the UK that has a lot of EDL links and far right links. I'm really sorry, I cannot remember the name offhand, but I don't think it's no, but no, it's not shown. It wouldn't take a lot of googling to find a link without you know.
Hello YouTube promotions.
It was Monopoly. There we go.
It's
yes, Andy Cleek is the guy's
Monopoly
name.
events.
Monopoly events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, yourself.
My concern, oh sorry, okay. My concern really is those kind of things. It's kind of like a segregated thing. It sounds like if it's like you're just cutting off. If it's that kind of thing that's happening, it's still happening. And it's not, you know, we've had Bob Joseph here already. I'm glad that you mentioned it because I have come across it, and it's a shame because the thing is that there's a very much rooted connection to Egypt when it comes to telling the story in the architecture, or telling the story of the narrative of what's happened back in the history of those days. But at the same time, that's a good thing to point at because there are people like myself that have just come here on their own, and I don't know, I'm maybe a complete stranger, and there might be some people who might be a red flag for them to target me for just coming to do something that I'm naturally born to do. I can't do anything else. And then be targeted and bullied for just being naturally creative and
it's not on.
And I think, but you can't always put a cigarette or a warning on every event to say you can't go to this event.
Yeah, like why, you know, this like somebody of Andy Cleek's level who, you know, is making some serious money out of one of the top national things. You know, you don't need to worry about his privacy because, you know, we can hurt the guy if we really put our minds to it. I'm sure most of the thousands of people that attend those events have no idea of his racist links. So, yeah. Sorry, very quickly.
Yeah, I don't know whether you have time, but on the kind of topics broadly, if you're looking at an event online, maybe it's been advertised on Instagram, maybe you go to their website, are there some key things that you do personally to kind of suss out if there are immediate warning signs, or conversely if there are immediate sort of green flags that you see? And this isn't going to be 100% perfect, obviously, but you know, what are some things that you sort of rely on, like heuristically?
I think definitely talking about inclusivity, talking about accessibility. Like if someone is, if you're looking at an events page and they are talking about those things on day one, and they're saying if you are a queer artist, if you are an artist that is not, you know, white British, if you are, we want you to come and join us, we want you here. That is always like the best green flag that you can see in a show. I'm really conscious that we're running out of time.
That's a really good answer, Emily.
Wrapping up for the next one. Like I was always say, like, look for the green flags rather than like the red flags don't show up till you get there, because the red flag shows are the ones that, like, they're nice on the surface, and then you start finding out all the horrible stuff when you get there. The green flags are that they are inviting you in, and they're saying if you need something from this show, tell us, let us know. That kind of thing.
I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much, Emily Brady, Steve Tanner, Dominic Huang.
I feel that it's something actually really important to say, and that is really bothered me and on my mind is that, you know, we've got to deal with the fact that two of the biggest names in our industry are absolute shitbag abusers. I'm naming Neil Gaiman and Warren Ellis. They're, you know, and some of the Warren Ellis, especially, the signs were there a long time ago. And I just don't know, it really bothers me that we didn't deal with that.
Yeah, I think honestly, my feeling is there's so much more for conversation out there, the bar tonight. So let's keep it going. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you all.